This house I'm sitting in right now was 300 Bitcoin 5 years ago. This house I'm sitting in right now is 20 Bitcoin today. This house I'm sitting in right now will be 1 Bitcoin within 5 years. It imposes a discipline by that energy-backed system. As long as it stays decentralized and secure, which I believe it's inevitable that it does, it reprices everything in the old system over time. In other words, you're never too late to buy Bitcoin.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Time is going so fast. And that saying, may you live in interesting times. God, I hope it's going to get more interesting than this. And with a special guest today is Jeff Booth. I'd like to say a few things. The reason Jeff's important right now is this here is a 1964 Kennedy half dollar. And it's the last pure silver half dollar. And then from there, it went to fake money. And then we went to this stuff here, which I call toilet paper today. And then this here is a Zimbabwe dollar. And I think it's 10 million or whatever it is. And this won't buy you an egg. And I had the good fortune of being in Zimbabwe when it collapsed, or the bad fortune. So I've been in the best places at the wrong times and stuff like this. But there's also a silver lining. And that's why I want to have Jeff Booth on here, because his book, The Price of Tomorrow, fits everything in my belief system, because I'm a student of Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller. And I said to Jeff a while ago, he's a new Bucky Fuller as I'm concerned, because we're talking about inflation today. But in reality, pure capitalism, the price should be coming down, not going up. But it's only going up because they're playing games with money, as Bucky Fuller said. And it just upset him to no end. So 74 or something, he wrote The Grunge of Giants. Grunge stands for Gross Universal Cash Heist, how our wealth is stolen via our money. So when I saw Jeff's book, The Price of Tomorrow, he's my new Bucky Fuller right now, because prices should be coming down. But as you know, the prices are going through the roof right now. And I believe a lot, not the only part of it, but a large part of it is because they're playing games with money. So Jeff, welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show again, and I appreciate your insights this interesting time in history.
It is so good to see you, and it is, like you say, to live in interesting times.
So tell us how you came about the price of tomorrow, because what you're talking about was Fuller's generalized principle called ephemeralization. Ephemeralization means you should always be able to do more and more with less and less. But what we're doing is less and less with more and more. So we're completely opposites. When I saw the price of tomorrow, I said, you're on it. It's a generalized principle because prices should be coming down, but they're going up. So would you explain that paradox or dichotomy from us?
Yeah, and it actually should be really easy to see. It should be really simple for people to see, because if you just start with something that is true for sure, the natural state of the free market is deflation. And why would that be true for sure? Because every single thing an entrepreneur needs to create has to compete with what was there before. And you as a user or buyer of products or services only use the things that provide you more value. You're part of the choice. So how could it be every entrepreneur to compete in a free market has to compete more value for more value to give to you, and you choose the things that provide more value? How could it be the prices go up? And so what you see there is the natural state of the free market is deflation, and technology makes that faster and faster and faster. In other words, you should be living in exponential deflation. Every year, prices should fall at a faster and faster rate as the entire world heals and gets richer from that structure. But you don't measure that structure from the natural state of the free market. In other words, what you're actually measuring is you've never lived in a free market. You've never lived on a global free market. You believe you have. You believe because your market is better than other people's market, but no one on the planet even has a reference point for what a global free market looks like. This is what Bucky was describing. This is what I describe. And so So what does that say about the market we measure in? It is a centralizing market. It is a control structure designed to siphon away your wealth and success. And as you're living in that control structure, you're yelling at people on either side of that control structure while making it stronger. Because you too wouldn't let all banks fail. You too wouldn't, if prices started falling from a credit-based system, you would beg them to print more money. And so these two systems are diametrically opposed. One, the free market; one, a centralizing market that has to centralize more, misallocate capital at a greater and greater speed to stop the free market from working. And so, right. Yeah, and so that's it. So then you go to the next question is, what has, and this is I think why you've always talked about gold, silver, Bitcoin now, is what could resolve that paradox? If for 5,000 years we've always fallen back into the centralization and we've allowed ourselves to be stolen from, and gold gets repriced, what could solve that paradox? Because we have to be part of the solution. We have to be, and we've always fallen for tricks.
So, Jeff, being naive, when I studied with Fuller back in the 70s, when this is the 1964 was the last real silver coin. And then in 71, Nixon took this off the gold standard. So this became pure fiat or government decree. So when I read your book here, The Price of Tomorrow, prices should be coming down. But today, the gap between rich and poor grows wider because every time you print more money, the rich get richer, but the poor and middle class get poor. Because when you print money, assets go up in price, but so does chicken, eggs, and housing. So now we have a homeless crisis across the world because all the central banks in the world, which are Marxist by definition, central, when they print money, you and I get richer. But most of the people listening to this podcast right now are getting poorer because inflation is eating them alive.
It's worse than you say, because most people are measuring inflation from zero, where they should be measuring inflation from -5, because their life should be getting easier. As all of the productivity in the world, as people work to try to provide value to them, it gets siphoned out because they don't know they should be measuring from negative. They don't know that the natural state is that, because they're like fish swimming in water that don't know what water is. They're measuring everything from the misallocation, and from there, there's always somebody trying to steal your money from that system.
Right. And what disturbs me, Jeff, as a U.S. Marine, fought in Vietnam twice, and I fought against Marxism. But Marxism was alive and well in our school system.
Completely.
And you know what I mean? And so our leaders are now Marxists, but don't know it. And it's in our central banks, the Fed, Bank of Japan, European central banks.
It's a global cartel. It's a global cartel. So there is nothing, and when you could, and these are hard things for most people to understand, and then a lot of people that are actually yelling at other people inside the system, they don't actually realize they're making it stronger by their actions within that system. But if the natural state of the free market is deflation, then what does it say about the market you're measuring from?
So look at true capitalists like Steve Jobs, fantastic entrepreneur. He gave us the greater products like Apple and all this. You could do more and more with less and less. Yep. That is capitalism. Yep. And that's what you're writing about, The Price of Tomorrow. We should have more and more power, more benefits, but the prices should be coming down. But in this book here, The Grunch of Giants by Buckminster Fuller, he wrote about the moment you start messing with our money supply, which we started to do in 1944, 64, and then 71 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Every time they print money, you and I get richer. But the poor and the middle class get poorer, and they still believe what they were taught in school, work hard, save money, and get out of debt and all this, not realizing that the dollar is debt now.
Yeah.
And all currency is debt.
So a credit reserve system or a debt-based system, the money is introduced through debt. So if you allowed deflation from that system would have no money left. If you paid back all your debt, if everyone in the world paid back the debt, there would be no money. So that system requires exponential debt, which is the opposite of a free market, that allows prices to fall. And so
what Jeff is saying here, if this guy Dave Ramsey says get out of debt, well, if we actually did that in this system, there'd be no money, because money is, we have to borrow money to create money.
Right.
Is that true?
Which is so ludicrous that we've invented a system that everybody's saying and blaming everyone else from that system that requires an exponential rise of debt to offset the productivity that should be naturally flowing to you. Should be. So the question is, how do you resolve that paradox? How do you, if we've always been sucked into a system that and gold has always been repriced or stolen through war or something else, how do you get out of a centralizing system that constantly centralizes, where we can't if you could cheat money and everyone else played on your money and they lost by you just pressing a button, human nature says you'll cheat money.
Again, I was in Zimbabwe when this thing collapsed, the Zim dollar. That was terrifying.
What's interesting is everybody's comparing the relative debasement of their currencies, and even in Zimbabwe or Nigeria or any of these countries, Argentina, Venezuela, over and over and over again, people in US are saying, look at those stupid people in those countries. So they're debasing their currency like that, not realizing that they're debasing that it's the rate of theft in their own currency too. That's why prices are going up so much.
And that's why Bucky wrote this book here, The Crunch of Giants. It says, when we print money, let me say it again and again and again, you and I get richer, but the poor middle class gets poor, because inflation makes true assets go up, like gold and silver and Bitcoin go up. But it also makes chicken, eggs, and French fries go up too, And McDonald's is going broke because the poor can't, today McDonald's is luxury for the poor and middle class. I mean, Jeff, can it get any worse than that when you can't afford to go to McDonald's?
Well, here's an interesting thing. I don't know if we have time in this segment. I'll say it quickly. I believe right now that what Bitcoin is representing is if you have an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. So it's something that's never existed, and it's bounded by energy. And people right now are inside a jail cell, yelling at all of the people, the captors inside that jail cell. And because Bitcoin is open, decentralized, secure, protocol bounded by energy, the cell door is open. And all they need to do is move their time over into the other system, and they can never be debased again. They're completely outside of that system.
And it took me a while to catch on to Bitcoin. I bought it at 6,000. And it's like one of those FOMOs, I wish I should have bought more. You know what I mean? That's greed sets in there. And by the way, we make no recommendations, which purely educational, informational. What you do, we still recommend you study more. When we come back, we'll be talking about ego, death, capital, but more importantly, why the rich are getting richer and the poor and the middle class are getting poorer. And I'm afraid that leads to what they call civil war. What an oxymoron, a civil war. That makes no sense. But the gap between rich and poor now is so wide. You can see it. It's all over the world. In China, Japan, the gap is too wide because we start printing fake money. This is toilet paper. So we come back with Jeff Booth, and what can you do to not be a victim of fake money like the Zim dollar? We'll be right back.
Gold is up over 25% this year, and I believe it's just getting started. Even Goldman Sachs says it could keep climbing through the end of the year. But most people, they're still stuck in paper gold. They buy ETFs thinking they're covered, but that's not gold. That's a paper promise, an IOU. And when the system breaks, that paper won't mean much. Even worse, gold ETFs are taxed like collectibles, not like a real investment. You could get hit with a 28% capital gains tax. That's not a hedge, that's a trap. I don't own paper gold. I own physical gold, the kind that you can hold, store, pass on. No Wall Street exposure, no counterparty gain, just a time-tested asset that helps strengthen and diversify your savings. And yes, you can move your real gold into your IRA or 401k tax-free. If you want to learn how, text GOLD to 24999. You'll get the Rich Dad Gold Forecast Guide. It explains how real gold can help you hedge against uncertainty and why so many are turning to it right now. Again, text GOLD to 24999 and get the facts before the next wave hits. The average time to hire for most organizations is 30 to 45 days. Are you tired of the costly and lengthening hiring process? Simplify and speed up your recruitment by using the experts at Express Employment Professionals. Reduce time to hire, cut down on multiple interviews, and lower your recruitment costs. Whether you're looking for contract workers or new team members, our streamlined recruiting, candidate screening, and hiring process is more efficient than hiring on your own. Visit expresspros.com today. Haven't used a staffing company before? We know that you enjoy learning new things and keeping up with trends and efficiencies. Make a change this year with your hiring. Businesses are navigating a landscape that has never been more expensive or regulated. Start at expresspros.com to find the location near you. With more than 860 locally owned offices, you'll get the hiring support that you need at expresspros.com.
All right, welcome back. This is part two. And it's been a person I respect and admire, Jeff Booth. His book, The Price of Tomorrow, because he replaced my friend here, Buckminster Fuller. And the price of tomorrow should be getting cheaper. But unfortunately, it's getting more expensive because they're printing fake money here. And the problem is the gap between rich and poor gets bigger. And the rich get richer every time they print money, and the poor middle class get poorer. So Jeff is going to be we're going to talk about one of his, which full disclosure, I'm an investor in, general partner Ego Death Capital. It's a new way not a new way of investing, but it's a new philosophy underneath the old system or above the old system. And I trust people, and this is not a recommendation, just for full disclosure, I do invest in it. But the rich are getting richer and the poor and middle class are getting poor because inflation is going up in assets, but it's also going up in food, McDonald's and Burger King. And the people are having a tough time because, as you know, our school system, which is primarily Marxist, teaches nothing about money. And a central bank is Marxist. So Jeff, take it away, because I'll let you I've run the agenda so far. What would you say to people right now to prepare for what is already occurring? I mean, I think we're at the death of an old system. We're at the death of this system here.
So you I think you started on it in the last one, and when you got into Bitcoin, right? And what you did when you talked about Bitcoin, you talked about it in the U.S. currency, as it's 6,000 when you bought it, 6,000. Now it's way higher in the U.S. currency. So what you're actually doing is measuring Bitcoin in a currency that's been debasing. But currencies shouldn't measure other currencies. Currencies should measure prices. So if you measure prices in Bitcoin, you'll see all prices fall forever. You'll see it's perfectly matches. In fact, it's the first global free market that's ever existed, and it's imposing a discipline that prices fall forever. It imposes a discipline I wrote about in my book. It imposes a discipline Bucky wrote in his book. It's the first time ever that exists because it's open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And so
you're saying Bitcoin is imposing
It's imposing a discipline that we wouldn't choose. We wouldn't allow the existing system to collapse. We wouldn't allow. We think there's a savior there. We think there's Elon will save us. Trump will save us. This other. We think. And by the way, it's not those people, or some of it are better than others, but it's a system problem that cannot solve itself from that system. A credit-based system has to grow forever exponentially, and by doing so, it has to steal your money exponentially. The other system is because it's bounded by energy. It doesn't care if we want to print $20 trillion, $100 trillion, which doesn't care if you want to steal more money. It doesn't care. Every 10 minutes, it has a new block, and it's imposing a discipline. So meaning this house I'm sitting in right now was 300 Bitcoin 5 years ago. This house I'm sitting in right now is 20 Bitcoin today. This house I'm sitting in right now will be 1 Bitcoin within 5 years. It imposes a discipline by that energy-backed system. As long as it stays decentralized and secure, which I believe it's inevitable that it does, it reprices everything in the old system over time. In other words, you're never too late to buy Bitcoin. You're never too late to move your time from the system that's cheating you to the system that's helping you. Ever. You should learn why. You should learn why you should go into self-custody. You should learn why you need to protect yourself in the new system. You should learn. You should not trust a whole bunch of scammers in this system and centralize. But if you actually understand Bitcoin, you are part of a network that cannot be cheated. And you are you're part of an honest protocol that is imposing what Bucky wanted, imposing what I talk about, imposing it, that forever prices will fall relative to your Bitcoin. Now, it'll look volatile. You'll naturally think it's going up because most of your measurement is from the system that's debasing. But if you don't do that, if you just measure in Bitcoin, you'll see the perfect clarity of a global free market, the first global free market that's ever existed, that's having faster and faster prices falling for you.
Right. I mean, Bucky Fuller was a futurist, was considered one of the greatest geniuses of our time. And he predicted Bitcoin a long time ago because he was watching kids play electronic games. And when he saw the score being carried on top of which is the ledger, for the electronic game, he says that was the future. And I'm sitting there, I barely use my cell phone. I had no idea what he was talking about. So let's go into, again, for full disclosure, I'm an investor in Ego Death Capital. And you're it's not a good word, but you're killing it, man. You're on it.
It's remarkable because and by the way, and before I get to the Ego Death Capital, what would happen? And so what the free market does, anything with more margin or anything more broken, there's a bigger opportunity to solve. So monopolies can't actually exist for long in a free market because the monopoly creates more margin, and entrepreneurs attack that margin to create more value. So if you had a world that was consolidating and centralizing, and everybody was worried, and everything got scared over here, and Bitcoin was confusing to them, where would the value be? And so what we did in Ego Death Capital is we realized Bitcoin is a protocol. It's like the internet, and the protocols come in layers. No other coin, by the way, all other coins, all of the other things are going to go to zero against Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is a protocol, and protocols come in layers, and they build more functionality in layers, just like the internet. The internet started in 1969. And until 1989, and the same technology we're using right now for this call is on the internet on that protocol stack. But most people missed it because it came in layers, and they missed it through the 90s too, because they didn't understand all of the innovation, all the entrepreneurs that were building on top of that. Your iPhone's on top of it. This is on top of it. Everything's on top of it today, but it comes slowly in layers, and that's what's happening in Bitcoin. So we understood Ego Death. What we said is, if this is coming in layers, if this is true and this is coming in layers, what would this look like, and where can we invest our capital to be able to accelerate the new internet, the new global internet, which is Bitcoin, to create tons of value away from this broken, horrific system that people are trapped in? And as we do that, the returns are outrageous. Why? Because people are trapped over here and they're finding value in this new system, and it's growing so fast by providing that value. And those returns are denominated in Bitcoin. So the companies are turning profitable really quickly. And then they're adding more Bitcoin to their balance sheet every single month, because they're and why would that happen in a free market? Because they're providing so much value to people that are stuck in the old system. So for me, I can't believe more people can't see it. Because if you lived in this world, it's abundance everywhere. It's so crazy. It's so exciting. And so but I understand I'm at the very edge, the front edge of what we're seeing. You get to see this because you're an investor in the fund. You get to see all of the exciting things that are happening and how fast the growth is. But most of the planet, 7.9 billion people, are still stuck in that other system, giving their time to the system that's extracting their time. But you don't have
I understood the way you explained it to me was in the industrial age, you're restricted by physicalness. And what happens in the digital age, there's no restriction. And it can go exponential so quickly. And that's when I said, okay, so since I'm an old guy and I don't know how to understand what's in Jeff Booth's mind, I'd rather just give you my money and let me see what you can do with it. And if we lose it, we lose it. I was not really, I was just enthusiastic about your philosophy, and it's paying off because we're not restricted. We're not restricted right now.
If you said, and this is the thing, I think the thing that you touched with Bucky Fuller, that you're touching with me, what are we as humans? Like truly, we're abundance creating machines out of scarcity. Any scarcity gets attacked, and it's all of the ideas to solve the problems come out of our brains. And so, of course, AI is going to expand. Of course, but these are all ideas that we come up with. And the output of those ideas should serve us all, and prices should fall in a free market. So anything that stops that is not capitalism. It's not it's not a free market. It's a control system. And so again, I come back to, you have a chance right now, if you understand Bitcoin, if you want to do the work, you can move to the first global free market that's ever existed. And no one can stop you. And it's your choice, instead of staying in the jail cell. Now you have to do the work, because there's a lot of people out there wanting to scam you and to sell you meme coins and everything else. So you have to understand that this would be a chaotic thing for your brain to understand, right? To say, but if you do the work, you can join the first global free market that's ever existed.
Right. And the reason, for full disclosure, we don't recommend anything, but I'm just telling you what I invest in, what I've done. Yeah. And the reason I did it is when I read The Price of Tomorrow, that was ephemeralization, a journalized principle. How do we do more and more with less and less? Yeah. That's what entrepreneurs do. The bureaucrats do less and less with more and more. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Federal Reserve Bank does more and more with 5,000 PhDs, which explains why we're in trouble.
So what are you doing with your time? Think about what you're doing. You're expanding the free market by moving more of your by investing in us and investing more of your time into Bitcoin. What you're doing is moving your time from all of those people to something that can't be stopped, which is beautiful.
Yeah. So if I could explain the cash flow game back there, I created that in 1996. Because the most obsolete system is the school system. And thank God Donald Trump is shutting down the Board of Education, whatever he's shutting down. He's going after the labor unions and all this, which are all Marxist. But we created this board game out of ephemeralization that people could teach people bypassing an old school system. And naturally, I catch hell from the screaming left-wing academic types. I say, what have you ever taught me about money? And they, but you have to have a college degree. I said, well, you tell that to Steve Jobs and Michael Dell and Bill Gates. They don't have college degrees. They've done pretty good. You know what I
mean? You pick up on something that's so important. We talked about it quickly in the break. If the natural state of the free market is deflation, and you think that there's inflation is normal, right? Think about how much money can be stolen from you by teaching you that is normal. And so all of the ideas that people don't think that they can understand the economy and how simple the economy is, it comes down to two things. We trade with each other to provide more value, And because we trade with each other to provide more value, prices must fall in a free market. Must.
Right.
So everything else you hear is essentially a lie that gets stronger by your belief in it. It's just a Rube Goldberg machine, and people don't want to question it because they're so convinced by some other expert told them why they should live in a system that steals their money.
And how it steals your money is inflation and taxation.
Yeah, and instead of saying inflation, because inflation, there's people that believe that you should have inflation. Don't say inflation. Say theft in your money. You don't have a vote in it. You have no vote in theft in your money.
Yeah, this is my final thought on this one. They need inflation to pay back the last theft.
Yeah. But greater and greater theft forever from that system. And you don't have to measure from that system anymore. Nobody can stop you from measuring from a different system.
And the year the Fed came in, so the Internal Revenue Service come in.
Exactly.
Talk about theft.
Exactly.
Talk about theft. Hey, Jeff, I want to thank you, for being so much a contributor to the Rich Dad educational system. Again, we make no recommendations. Full disclosure, I invest in Ego Death. I'm very happy I'm invested there. Versus the bond market is crashing. Why would you invest in bonds? How stupid do you have to be? It's the death of an old system, the bond market. So anyway, Jeff, thank you very, very much, and I wish you the best, and let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Great seeing you, Robert.
And we'll come back with a final word from Rich Dad. We'll be right back. Thank you, Jeff. Welcome back. Again, special thanks to a longtime friend of the Rich Dad Network, Jeff Booth. His book is The Price of Tomorrow, Why Prices Should Be Coming Down, but it's going up to support a very, very broken financial system, which I studied, I believe this is 1974, from Buckminster Fuller, who was one of the greatest minds of our times. And Fuller talked about ephemeralization. It's the ability to do more with less. So a pure capitalist is always doing their best to bring a better product at a better price. And so I created this board game here to bypass the school system because they're not teaching about money anyway. So this game was designed for people to teach people the ability to do more and more with less and less. I never found that so easy to become a multimillionaire with anything but Bitcoin. I mean, you don't have to do anything. I'm not saying it's perfect and all this stuff. It could go down. I agree. But right now, I'd rather have Bitcoin than not have it. And when you talk about this, why Bitcoin is doing well is because this is dying as well as the Zimbabwe dollar died. And so as Jeff said, you got to switch your systems. So we don't make recommendations, but that's what we've done. So anyway, thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show. And, go out there and ephemeralize. Do more and more with less and less. Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.